Welcome. This is Leading with Spirit, the show that gives you an in-depth look at topics like what it takes to navigate your spiritual journey, how to heal yourself and grow your spiritual gifts, and balanced practices to expand your business and your spiritual leadership. I'm your host, Spirit Bird, shamanic teacher, healer, and author, here to guide you on your journey to becoming your most potent spiritual leader. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to another episode of Leading with Spirit. I'm your host, shamanic teacher, Spirit Bird. Today we're diving into a topic that's both simple and profound: what to call yourself as a spiritual practitioner. We'll also be looking at using the term shaman in general. You might have had questions around that. Is it okay to call myself a shaman? When is it okay to call myself a shaman? I don't identify with being a shaman, but what should I call myself? So we're going to look at all of that. Plus, we'll be talking about authenticity in your spiritual leadership in general. Specifically, you don't have to look a certain way to be a spiritual guide, and where that might be holding you back, or where you actually might be doing a disservice to yourself by trying to follow a tradition instead of being who you are. So whether you're a seasoned healer or you're just starting your spiritual journey, this episode is for you. So let's get started. First off, let's address an important question in general. When it comes to sharing your spiritual side in the world, your title might feel like it's really important, but it might not actually be that important. And many of us get caught up in trying to find the perfect title. And I've seen this a lot with people that are new to the work, and I've worked with quite a few clients on this as well. And I can see why it would feel like it was really important. And what I have noticed, however, is we do need to be careful of one thing. If you find yourself swirling on this, like spinning out and becoming frozen or having trouble moving forward because you're not sure what the right title is, and especially if you feel like it's really important to get the title right because it's going to make you more credible or valuable, then there's a very good chance that there is some self-worth stuff underneath that's ready to get looked at. And you don't have to feel bad about that. We all have that, and we all continue to look at that. I continue to look at my own pieces around self-worth. People that I train with do the same. And so this is something that we can always keep exploring and excavating. And it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to look here at where you might be fixating on something to avoid doing the self-work, or where you might be fixating on it because you're just not actually feeling totally confident yet. And this is really important information to have. Now, that being said, I want you to know that on this episode, while what you title yourself doesn't really matter, it's not going to actually stop you from doing your work in your world or keep you from growing as a practitioner, as a business. I am going to look at some practical tips for you to get started, but mostly before we dive in any deeper, I just want you to know that in the end, it's really not that important. And actually, it's something that can be really fun to play around with. So again, if you feel like you're really getting frozen or swirling around in here, take a step back and do a little bit of inner work around your worth and see if there's something there that might still need to be explored. Once you clear that, then what you call yourself becomes irrelevant, and actually it might even become a lot of fun. Because here's the truth, that title isn't important. What's more crucial than your title is that you are authentic, and whatever you do choose to call yourself aligns with who you are and what you do. There isn't a right or wrong thing to call yourself. There isn't the perfect phrase that shows who you are and teaches people how valuable you are. There isn't a term that makes it easier for you to get hired. It's more about, does it actually match who you are authentically inside and what it is that you do? And so also where you might be swirling around is what I see it most often is one, either concerns about you looking validated or looking like your title gives you credibility. You see this when people list like 6 different abbreviations at the end of their name. It's because they, no offense, but that's a pretty clear sign that they're not actually feeling confident in what they do, because they need to list all of these qualifications that most people don't even know what they stand for, and they're not hiring you for that reason, right? And so I see that as a common way that you might get stuck or blocked. The other place you might get stuck or blocked around what you title yourself is if you feel like you need to encompass everything that you do and all of the magic that you have into this 2 or 3 word title, which is very challenging to do. And so just keep an eye on that too. If you feel like you're getting caught in that, just take a step back, take a little look at doing some inner work, and just know you get to play here, and what you call yourself isn't that important. And think about it. When someone comes to you for guidance, and I know they have, if you're a coach or a healer or intuitive guide of some kind, then your track record probably shows that a lot of your life, people would come to you for advice. You probably have a track record of people, strangers, people that you meet, telling you something that they've hardly told anyone else. This is really common when you are authentically being called to this path. And so when somebody comes to you for guidance or healing or insight, they're not coming to you because of their title. Think about the times that people came to you before you were trying to do this professionally. You didn't even have a title then, right? They're coming to you because they resonate with your energy. They resonate with your authenticity and your unique approach to how you help them, or your unique approach to healing something that they're going through right now or they resonate with. So your title really is just a way to give them this hint about what to expect. It's just a label, right? And it doesn't define the essence of you or the essence of your work. And when you're holding yourself in your worth and your confidence and trusting who you are and what you do, then people are going to connect with that, not what you call yourself. On that note, I'm going to add this little piece here too, that you don't have to wear certain clothes or have certain objects around you or perform certain kinds of rituals that especially that don't resonate with you to be a genuine spiritual guide. Especially when it comes to shamanism, people, I'll go into this a little bit more later in the episode. We mean, but it's common for people to mean to be respectful, but actually be appropriating when they don't mean to be, when they're trying to do the opposite. And the way that this happens is when we take on a look or an embodiment of what we think spirituality should look like when it doesn't actually resonate with us. And this can go beyond just what we're wearing. So this can be when we're using terms or singing songs that don't resonate with us. This can be when we're following certain diets that don't actually resonate with us. This can often look like when we have an awakening and we start a spiritual practice and we accidentally transfer the old paradigm beliefs from maybe our Christian or religious upbringing, where we actually transfer the hierarchical beliefs from that system into the new one, and we feel like we're not allowed to ever have negative energy or feel anger, right? And especially it shows up in how we dress. Oftentimes, people will mean well, but they'll mimic what they think a real or authentic spiritual person does instead of being who you really are, right? And it's perfectly okay to be a shaman and wear a suit. It's perfectly okay to be a shaman and use modern tools alongside ancient practices. I don't remember what episode it was, but I go into this around spirituality, spiritual marketing, and advertising, where a lot of people have this belief that if you advertise or market, it's automatically not authentic or not spiritual. For me, it's super authentic and super spiritual. I get to use the magic that I have and infuse it into this modern tool. And for me, it's a lot of fun, right? So I just want to name that too, that it doesn't matter how you look. You can be a shaman and wear sequin dresses right? You can be a spiritual guide and wear jeans. None of that actually matters. What matters is the sincerity of your practice and the authenticity with which you share it. So I really want you to just take a second and pause. If you can close your eyes and take a breath and let that sink in. What you call yourself or how you look doesn't matter. What matters is the sincerity of your practice and the authenticity with which you share it. Oh, what a relief. Cool. We can actually just be ourselves, right? I do want to give you some practical tips and advice because there are things to think about when you're choosing your title, but I wanted to emphasize that point first before you get caught up in examining what title is right for you. And I remember this part of my journey for sure. I remember really being torn between wanting to honor traditional ways and be respectful, and also finding what truly resonated with me. And I needed to find that balance, but more importantly, I needed to find what was true for me and my own authentic beliefs before I could really even choose uh, what title to use. So actually, maybe I'll go into that a little bit more right now, and specifically around shaman. So I'll share more about other terms that you can use later in the episode, but right now let's go ahead and just drop into the title of shaman, because you might be wondering, can I call myself that? In the last episode, I talked about ways that you might be called to the shamanic path, what that might look like, how to tell. Today, in this little piece, I want to talk about using the word, referring to yourself as a shaman, alternatives to shaman, and how do you know when it's time, right? So before I go into that, traditionally, the title of shaman is one where the community calls you that. So shaman in general comes from Siberia. I'm not going to deep dive into the history of that. You can Google it. And it's basically spread across the globe as a term that's commonly used to refer to a set of practices that tend to be true for every indigenous culture around the world. And then the shaman in particular is the person or people in a community that is responsible for acting as a intermediary between the spirit world and the 3D realm. And their practices and the way that they become a shaman varies from culture to culture. In the way that I was taught that you would never refer to yourself as a shaman. That's something that other people would call you. But I was also taught that you would never tell people you were a healer. And I was also taught that you would never charge for spiritual work. And if you did, then automatically you're bad. And it took me a while to realize, hold up, that is not true at all. And especially when I started having people, when I was early on in my practice, people started coming to me to receive healing work. And I wasn't telling people that I do this. I wasn't trying to make money doing it. It was just, I was doing this work for myself because it helped me, and mostly because I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it. It satisfied a part of my consciousness that wanted to play, that didn't get to play in our ordinary reality. And part of my journey was that people did just come to me. And it wasn't until I started seeing clients that I realized, whoa, actually, there's like a whole other perspective here that doesn't get communicated in the spiritual realm, which is that helping people is spiritual, and that sometimes charging people is spiritual. I had to lose this old belief that didn't apply to me, that had me thinking that I had to keep myself small, that I wasn't allowed to tell people who I am or what I do, and that I definitely wasn't allowed to ask for an exchange for my services, for my really magical, brilliant services that change your life. Like, why wouldn't I need or be able to ask for an exchange for that? And so it was a struggle for a while. And I realized at one point that was partially what I was doing to myself to hold myself back, to delay stepping forward and sharing who I was in the world. And partially it was because I meant well. I didn't mean to be disrespectful. And what I realized is no matter what I do, no matter what you do, there are going to be people that are not happy with what you title yourself. There are going to be people that think that it's wrong. There are going to be people that criticize you. There are going to be people that don't understand. And there are going to be people that hire you because of it, and there are going to be people that don't hire you because of it. So what's actually matters is that what's true for you. And so it was so interesting when I look back now, it's so interesting that I had such a big hang up here because at the time, I had, gosh, probably 12 years of formal training specifically in the shamanic path. So it wasn't like I was just exploring spirituality. It wasn't like I was just reading books about shamanism. I was training in lineages, like in this specific niche, we'll call it for right now, in this way of being. So it's so interesting to me that I had such a hang up using that term. And what I found is there is more to this picture than is black and white. And so a lot of people, and you might be one of them, believe that you have to be indigenous to train in this work or use that term. And it's not true. It's just not true. For me, I ended up choosing to stick with shaman because that's specifically what I trained in. And also, I realized I played with other terms and I just felt like it was covering up who I am and what I did. And I am conscious, part of my work, part of why I do my work in the world is because I want to help people connect with this part of them in a way that is respectful to traditions. Meaning, I help people work with what is true and authentic to them versus borrowing a ritual or a practice from another culture. And my one exception might be using the word shaman because that does track to a specific culture. I also just felt at this point, it's the term that's most commonly used to explain this type of work that I do. So I chose to use that and stick with it. So, and today I've also learned that, you know, we are multidimensional people, of course. You do need to be respectful here. I do encourage you to be mindful. I do encourage you to ask yourself some questions. Does it feel like it's true for me? I do encourage you to check in on why you want to use the term. But for most of us, and for most of the people that kind of resonate with my work, your concern or doubt might actually be holding you back. It's a good sign you have it. It shows that you care, but you might be overthinking it. And just the reminder, there is the reality that we do have race in this 3D world. And there's also this multidimensional world where all people have used this type of way of being in the world at some point in their culture's history. And you have many lives. And so like even for me, it's in my astrological chart that I have been carrying this type of work in my lives and in my body, and I incarnated it with it in my body. I already knew how to do this when I came here. I of course trained because one, that's to be in integrity, you should train. And to be respectful, you should train. And also to make sure you do no harm, you should learn from other people. But it was also just part of who I am. So like it checked all those boxes for it resonates and it feels the most true for who I am. And so how do you know if you've been training, if you've actually trained formally in this way, how do you know it's time and it's okay for you to use the term? And so that's largely a personal preference. For me, again, it was partially because the work that I was bringing forward. I was playing around with offering these different workshops on different parts of the work and the magic that I do. And I realized that I didn't really want to offer the parts. I realized I wanted to offer the whole thing. And that was shaman school. And so it made sense for me to use that term and for it all like fit together cohesively and authentically for who I am and what I was teaching. So that was part of it. And part of it was also asking for permission from the spirits. And also part of it for me was actually like reclaiming my own beliefs. And even though there's this very big spiritual community that might think I'm doing the wrong thing or might be judging me for what I'm doing, I knew that owning that term was part of me owning who I am and reclaiming that for myself and being able to step forward and share what I do without worrying about what other people are going to say or if they're going to judge me. I wouldn't say that I don't have feelings around it, but I'm moving forward and claiming who I am and not letting that outside influence change how I show up in the world. And so today, in the globalized and very spiritually eclectic world, many people are drawn to shamanic backgrounds to shamanic practices from diverse backgrounds. And they study these traditions with respect and integrity, and they're integrating shamanic methods into their healing work. So if you're drawn to shamanism but feel uneasy about using the title shaman, one, you can ask yourself, is it time? You can feel in your body the yes or no. You can ask spirit for the permission, right? Or if you've trained specifically in a lineage, you might do that too. And what I love seeing now is that what's rising up are more culturally specific terms for the healer in a lineage. So I love seeing that the specific culture that you might have trained in is starting to come out more rather than these broad terms. But if you have trained here and you want to speak to it, but you're not totally comfortable saying shaman yet, consider alternatives like shamanic practitioner. That's like a completely appropriate way to refer to yourself. It is equally as respected. And generally what that means is that you're in the practice of shamanism. You have been practicing shamanism. And because for most authentic shamans, if you're on this path, it's not a weekend training, right? It is years. And so for a lot of people, when they're starting the path, they feel more comfortable using the term shamanic practitioner. But again, it doesn't suggest that you're not qualified or you don't have full credit. Another term you can use is spiritual guide, or a common one that I used for a long time was shamanic healer. Again, just suggesting that I use shamanic terms and I'm a healer, but not necessarily that I'm calling myself a shaman. For me, that came later when I really was ready to claim who I am and what I do. And actually, I'm even being edgy now using the term master shaman. The term master might be triggering for people. The term shaman might be triggering for people. I have 15 years in this. It's part of my blood and my life. And I'm part of me just claiming this for myself is why I'm doing it. And also, there is a place where I do want to draw a distinction between me and my level of expertise and someone who was trained for a year, right? Again, not that they're not well versed, not that they're not good at what they do, not like they're not credible, but I'm just different. I have way more experience, and I think it's okay for me to claim that. So these titles acknowledge the influence of shamanic practices in your work without claiming a cultural role that might not be yours. So that is a good way to do it if you're uncomfortable using the term. And I think if you're uncomfortable in some ways, you should honor that. Examine the reasons why. And it might just be because it doesn't resonate. It might be because you actually are being called to be more broad and less specific. Remember, it's not the title that makes you a healer. It's your authenticity, your commitment to your practice, and your integrity with which you approach your work. Lastly, I'll really quickly add this anecdote that just popped through for me around that question of how do you know when you're ready? Because I went through the same process when I came out of the spiritual closet that I worked with plant medicine. It was the same process I went through when I came out of the spiritual closet that I was a healer, and then specifically that I was a shaman. My apprehension was because they were gaining popularity. When I came out of the closet as a shaman, the term had started to become more popular. And my concern, this shows you a lot about my inner work, but my concern was that I was afraid it would look like I was trying to get attention by using that term. And the same thing happened when I came out with the plant medicine work. I was afraid it was going to look like I was just hopping on the bandwagon because it was popular, when the reality was is I had years of experience prior to. And I had worked with mushrooms for a long time. Honestly, I didn't have like I had worked with mushrooms for a long time. And then I also had, gosh, it was probably a good at least 8 years where I worked in the field of shamanism without psychedelics at all. And so to me, it was really important. It's something I still encourage you if you're playing with plant medicine, and are you ready? And how do you know you're ready? And when do you say it? What do you title yourself? For me, I think it's a really important kind of qualification that you are able to offer work, like you're able to offer your healing services without plant medicine. If it's entirely dependent on plant medicine, then I encourage you to do some work around your own magic or ways to facilitate without the plant medicine. For me personally, I feel like that's a straight up requirement that if you can't do the work without the plant medicine, you have no business working with the plant medicine. But you might be called to it. And so that doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means it's time to do a little bit of training. And so you can actually uncover your gifts there. So I had been doing that work. I came back around to psychedelics after not using them for a long time in my work. And then I worked with mushrooms for a while, and I had the calling to work with ayahuasca, and I did specific training with it. And then I trained for another maybe year and a half, sort of by communicating with the medicine, but not actually ingesting any of it. And then I had this whole process with calling the medicine to me. I think I also talk about this up on another episode of training with ayahuasca. And anyway, but I had this question of like, well, how do I know when I'm really ready? And one of the things that came to me was, one, I was able to say no to it. I was able to, when I had the opportunity to take some, that it wasn't really in alignment with me at that moment, that I was able to say no to it. And the other piece was, coincidentally, somebody had gifted me a condor feather. And to me, it was like hadn't shared this with anybody, but I had this whole underlying question of, okay, I've trained in it, and I have this very robust background with working with people. I know my shit. I know how to work with this medicine. I've worked in some traditional ways. I hadn't trained in a traditional way, but I had trained. And so I wasn't sure how to be authentic with it, because it's, oh, there's certain tools that you can use with it, and there's certain things that people do with it that didn't feel authentic to me. And so to me, that's where you actually accidentally slip into appropriating, where if I would have picked up the tools that didn't actually resonate with me and that I hadn't actually trained with, then it wouldn't have been true and it wouldn't have felt right to use them. And the fact that somebody innocently given me this condor feather was a really clear sign to me that, yeah, it was time. You're ready. Here is this sign from spirit that, like, you have permission. You don't need to look for more permission anymore. It's time. And I went through the whole thing with the title there too. Interestingly enough, I actually went less specific. With shamanism, it felt important for me to use that term because it's what I do. For plant medicine, I stayed broad. I played around with using the term ayahuascaro. I played around with using the term maestra. But honestly, they didn't feel, one, they were culturally specific in a way that I didn't feel like was authentic to me. And when it comes to using culturally specific titles, rituals, practices, I firmly believe that you do need permission from that culture to use them. So if you haven't actually trained in them and you didn't actually get permission, then don't use them. Just like, I mean, I love breaking rules, but to me, that's just like a basic respect thing. Don't use them. And I think sometimes we think we're being respectful by trying to honor the tradition. But if we haven't actually trained there and it's not who we are, then we're actually doing the opposite. So for me, using the term ayahuascaro and maestra didn't really resonate. To me, plant medicine guide does. I work with more than one type of plant, and to me, it encompasses what I do without actually taking from a culture that isn't true to who I am or how I learned. So anyway, coming back around, if you're calling yourself a shaman, but it doesn't sit right, what can you do? You can consider terms like shamanic practitioner, shamanic guide, coach. These titles convey your role without having to cross cultural boundaries, and they also still allow your craft and spiritual identity that aligns with your personal truth to be revealed. But I want to take a moment to discuss alternatives in general. So if you don't even identify with being a shaman, maybe you're looking for a title and you haven't worked within shamanism, I want to talk about that for a minute. And again, this might be really helpful for you if you have been working in this field for a long time, but you're questioning if you want to use the title. And honestly, I'm in that spot. I've been working within the field of shamanism for a long time. I shared about this a little bit on the last episode. I'm in a void right now. I'm in a transformation right now. I am taking some leaps into the dark for my own growth and self actualization. I'm letting go of things that have been working but don't align with me anymore. And so part of that I'm considering is actually moving out of specifically the field of shamanism. There's benefits and drawbacks both ways. On the one hand, leaving the field of shamanism makes it harder for people that are looking for shamanism to find me. And I have worked specifically in that field for so long. And a lot of people are drawn specifically to that term. And I think a lot of people teaching it are doing it in a way that isn't good. So part of me wants to stay in that field to make sure the integrity is maintained, but also that's not a reason to stay in it. And there's a whole other piece where it's like actually having at this point being more broad might actually be helpful because I am a shaman. I teach shamanism. I teach how to do shamanic healing. I teach how to work with the spirit guides, but I also work in a much broader sense in all of my endeavors. So I'm playing around with different things. So let's explore some examples of titles you might choose if you don't identify with shaman and why they could be a good fit for you. So let's start with spiritual coach. Spiritual coach is great if your focus is on guiding individuals through personal growth, helping them set and achieve spiritual goals, and providing ongoing support. Then this might be a good title for you. And it also suggests this relationship of mentorship. And I'll say really quickly, you might have the title of just coach. That's what a lot of people use. I know people that also question that because it doesn't really resonate where they're like, I do so much more than coaching, right? And again, if you're listening to this, it's likely that you are super magical. You might not know how to use your gifts fully yet, but just using the term coach doesn't feel like it encompasses nearly what you do. So using the word spiritual coach can be a good way to just suggest that it's more than just coaching without getting lost in like what kind and all that stuff. Energy healer is another title that you might play around with, or energy coach, of course. So this title is great if your work involves modalities like Reiki, like chakra balancing, any form of energy work within the field. If you're a shaman, then you do energy work too. If you're a light worker, you do energy work. It clearly communicates that your primary tool is working with the energy fields to promote healing. Another broad one that you might like is intuitive guide or intuitive coach or intuitive healer. I don't really like intuitive healer personally, but it doesn't matter what I like. So basically, if you use intuitive abilities to help provide insights and guidance, whether that's tarot, whether that's astrology, whether that's divination practices, then this title can resonate. And I see this a lot with like business coaches. They'll say intuitive business coach, meaning that they have expertise in the business field, but they also give you guidance based on their intuition. And it emphasizes your role in offering wisdom and clarity and how you get your wisdom, how you get the suggestions that you give your clients. You might play with holistic practitioner. So for me, when I hear that term, I think that's broad and an inclusive title that works well if you integrate multiple modalities, but especially if you integrate things like that have to do with the body. So maybe you do energy healing or maybe you do intuitive guidance, but also you use herbalism or you do things like nutrition coaching or you do things like that are body related, then to me, that's a holistic practitioner is a great term to encompass that. And it speaks to a well-rounded whole person approach. You might like if your work is more about long-term spiritual development, helping people deepen their spiritual practice and understanding over time, this title can convey a commitment to that path, and that's the title of spiritual mentor. So when I hear the word mentor, I generally think of it more as this long-term development or long-term relationship. So again, you could try that on. And then if you're working in the field of plant medicine, you might like terms like integration coach, integration guide, um, integration specialist, counselor, that kind of thing. That's also up to you. If you are specifically working in that field, it's very clear cut. That's what you do. You help people integrate plant medicine experiences. For me, I still stick with my shamanic practices because my shamanic healing work also it's the same thing as integrating, except it includes working with the guides and using all of the magical tools that I have and all of the 3D tools that I have. So for me, like when I offer sessions, I don't split it up. I don't split up, here's business coaching and here's spiritual mentorship and here's plant medicine integration, because I'm going to bring all of the tools that I have in all of my sessions. And for most of my clients, you sign up to work with me based on what your goal is. So I have different programs for different objectives or goals. But when you're working with me one-on-one, I don't really even title those. They're just sessions with Spirit Bird, because we're going to do everything that I have in my amazing tool belt to help get you to where you want to be. So those are some things to play around with. Try them on. Don't overthink it. If you would like some more, if you're like, this is really getting to me and I do want to write this out or get some like clear steps to help me discern which is the right one for me, here are a couple of tips that might be helpful. You can reflect on your journey. So think about your spiritual journey and what your work means to you. What title feels like a natural extension of your story? So I would take some time and maybe even draw a line and kind of do a timeline of the experiences you had on your spiritual journey and what does that mean ultimately? So that could be helpful for you for getting clear on what title resonates. You can ask friends and mentors and clients. You can survey people and ask them, when I use this term, what does that mean to you? So it can be helpful to get that so that you have an understanding of how people perceive your work and what title resonates with them. But be very careful here, because their opinion, it can be helpful to hear what they think it means, but their opinion might not matter. And we want to be careful not to ask the wrong people. Like this happens a lot in business, right? Where you ask a bunch of your friends what they think you should do about your business, and they're not business coaches, so they give you the worst advice. I've seen that a lot in my containers too, where people that are new to healing work give other people the worst business advice ever. No, that's like all of the wrong things to do. So just be careful, know who you're asking. Be careful when you ask for feedback that you're actually asking somebody who has experience in the area, or if you're asking potential clients, that they are actually people that resonate with who you are and the work you offer, and that they would actually pay you. To be just taking advice from people who would never hire you anyway, or aren't interested in investing in making their lives better and making the lives of the people around them better. But it can be helpful to get some feedback. Just be careful that you don't buy into it too much. Experiment. Don't be afraid to try different titles. I have done that. I do that all the time, where it's like, okay, well, I actually want to try this on. Sometimes my title isn't even a title. Sometimes my title is like what you get from being around me. This is like super bold, but at one point, instead of a title, I think I said something like, seeing into the eyes of God is working with me. Like it resonated. It felt true. I felt authentic. I'm just fucking claiming. Do you want to see into the eyes of God? Come work with me. That's what I do. So you can play with that. I had a coach that I worked with for a long time. That was a fun piece for her, because she came from this traditional background where it was like, oh, I'm a coach. I'm an intuitive coach. I'm an intuitive business coach. And then it was like, actually, I'm a mermaid. Like super fun. So she's going to be attracting people that resonate with that vibe and also resonate with it being fun and not having to be too serious, not needing to worry about what your credentials say to be a good guide. I would say for sure, be clear and concise. Avoid jargon or like overly complex terms. Avoid Unless you are really experienced and have a big audience and are really developed in your work, I think at that point you can play a little bit more. But before that, avoid being too mystical. Avoid terms that people need special information to understand. And just be like, if you're debating, it's better to be more clear about what your work does, what you want to communicate through your work, than making it seem super mystical or being overly complex. And again, of course, ultimately, stay true to yourself. Your title should feel authentic and align with your values and your mission. And once you've chosen your title, just fucking own it, embrace it, at least for a little while. Try it on and hold it and embrace it. And use it consistently in your branding and your marketing and your communications. Let it become an integral part of your identity as a spiritual business owner. But remember, it is not set in stone. If you try it on for a while. Don't just try it on for 2 days. I've seen people do that too, where they're like, I'm this, and then they change this the next day. Give it at least 6 months. And if you still feel like it doesn't resonate, then give yourself permission to try something else. I've been using this title as shamanic teacher, master shaman for years. I probably am hanging on to it, but I'm playing around with not. I'm playing around with letting some of that go because you're going to grow and evolve. So again, this is just further emphasizes the point that your title doesn't matter that much. And your title might change, and that's okay. And what's important is that it continues to reflect your true essence and the work that you do. So that brings me to shaman school. Of course, I would want to mention shaman school because we are in the last month of enrollment. If you didn't listen to my last episode, just a reminder that this is my final enrollment of shaman school for 2024 and for 2025. So this is your last call to hop on board. If this work has been calling to you, now is the time for sure. If you're finding yourself coming up with reasons why you want to wait, you're doing yourself a disservice. I promise you, are doing yourself a disservice. That your purpose, who you came here to be, should not be last on your list and doesn't need to wait. And how amazing is it that you'll get this opportunity through shaman school, not only to master your spiritual gifts and step into spiritual mastery, but to have emotional and spiritual and business support in the process. I'm a big fan of make money while you learn. So if you're a spiritual practitioner, we support you with that. And also, you're going to be fulfilling this part of you. Like, how wonderful would it be to actually be living this vision that you see yourself being? Because you can do it. That's what it's here for. That's what shaman school is here for, to help you embody it and become it and make money doing it if that's what you want. Imagine for a second how wonderful it would feel to be living that reality instead of trying to push it down and pretend like it doesn't matter to you that much, or try to push it down or pretend, oh, what I really want is that maybe it'll just happen organically. It's not how it works. It's just not how it works. Shaman school is amazing. It is this deep dive. It is the full picture. So it is not just little pieces. How are we different than other shamanic training programs? It is a deep dive. It is an all in. We don't serve you portions of the shamanic path and then ask you to sign up for level 2 and level 3. It is all here in one. And we also teach you how to use it in your business if that's what you're doing. If you'd like to do this for your full-time work or part-time work, we'll help you do that. Why we're different really though is in shaman school, we teach you how to use your unique gifts. We're not teaching a practice that copies another ritual or another culture. We're not teaching you practices that copy other people. We're teaching you how to connect directly with the spirit realm and how to use your unique gifts to make incredible, transformative experiences for other people in your lives. And as a side effect, it improves your business. As a side effect, it improves your health. As a side effect, it improves your relationships drastically. And it's a lot of fun. And so my interest is really helping you find that authentic spiritual voice so that you don't feel like you need to look a certain way or act a certain way and in order to be a spiritual guide. That's just going to push people away. They can tell when you're faking it. And so what does that mean to you? What is it like to speak with your authentic spiritual voice? How do you own it? How do you own the power of the work that you do? And how do you offer really incredible transformational sessions that you can do from anywhere, that you can do in groups, that you can do individually, that you can do online, that are empowering for your participant and where they get to fully be involved in their own healing process? Super fun, so cool. Anyway, so if you'd like more information on that, I am still offering Ignite Your Inner Shaman call. You can look at the link in my show notes or anywhere. It's on all of my social media, or you can DM me if you would like to learn more. We'll be doing that through the end of the month. And also, if you're new here and you want to learn more about me and how I work, or more about this path in general, please join me for Shamanic Mastery. That's August 16 through 21. We're going to be covering the healer's path, the 4 core permission blocks that all healers face that hold them back from showing up as their full self. We're going to be doing a session on plant medicine, and we're going to be doing a session on growing your spiritual business. It's going to be so much fun. I've got lots and lots of really valuable content for you. And this might be helpful for you as well, because shaman school, of course, we work within the shamanic field, but you do not have to need to be a shaman when you come out. You can be a spiritual guide. You can use this practice to integrate it with your other modalities. Again, for me, my purpose and my focus is more on helping you embody who you are authentically as a healer and as a spiritual guide. We just do it via shaman school. So just know that it's not specifically, you don't have to be specifically drawn to shamanism to benefit and do this work. You do need to be ready to do it. You do need to say to yourself, be ready for yourself, that you actually don't want to keep holding yourself back anymore, and that you actually want to be the person that you came here to be. And you do need to do the work. We're serious. We have fun, but it's serious. So feel free to DM me if you have questions. Again, look for the link for Shaman School so you can book your Ignite Your Inner Shaman call. And we'll be looking for the link for Next Level Healer. It's going to be super interactive. You're going to get a lot of direct experience with me as well. So bring your questions and let's dive in. And again, whether you decide to call yourself a spiritual coach, an energy healer, an intuitive guide, or even a shamanic practitioner, remember the most important thing is for you to be true to yourself and your calling. If you're not sure what that is yet, again, come to shaman school. If you are in a transition and you're ready to bring your work forward in a different way, come to shaman school. Your title is just a word. What truly matters is the transformative impact you have on the lives of those you serve. And that's why we're here doing this work. That's why we're incarnated. And isn't it so amazing that we actually have the opportunity to be this person in the world? And why would we want to turn ourselves away from that? It would be a disservice to yourself to turn yourself away from that. And honestly, it'd be not very humble to have this beautiful opportunity in front of you and say no to the thing you came here to do. Thanks so much for joining me today. Until next time, stay true to your path and keep shining your light, baby. Until next time, I love you. Have you been hearing the call to expand your spiritual gifts and step into your next level of conscious leadership? If you're a coach, healer, or a spiritual leader, you can learn more about Shaman School and growing your spiritual business on our website, HoltonHealingArts.com, or send me a DM at Holton Healing Arts. Welcome to today's Q&A episode, where we explore questions about spiritual paths, intuitive gifts, growing a spiritual business, and shamanism. Do you have a question for us? Send us a DM at Holton Healing Arts. This question is from Maria from our Leading with Spirit Facebook group. And the question is, I feel like I'm hopping from modality to modality. How do I find my thing as a spiritual entrepreneur or healer? Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. I'm so glad you asked it, Maria. So I do see this a lot. And this is one of the things that we help with in shaman school, by the way. What I see is people want to offer spiritual work, but they're not really sure how to do that. And so what they end up doing is they end up jumping from certification to certification because they think it's the modality or the practice that will give them that ability instead of actually learning what their unique gifts are and how to deliver those gifts. So what I find to be most helpful in this area is actually practicing, learning some of the foundational tools, transformational tools that you need as a spiritual guide, and then making sure that you get lots of practice with people. Don't practice with family. I say this in my shaman school program, but this is also just generally what I recommend is that you don't practice on family. Our soul parts are so entangled that unless you're really experienced, it's hard for you to actually do healing work on a family member, especially if it's a parent and child relationship, unless you're really, really experienced and have a special relationship. So just know that there's nothing wrong here. It's actually really respectful to not work with family. But outside of that, work with people that are serious about this work and want to get better, and want to live better lives and improve their lives. This is one of the reasons that our shaman school is so effective, is that we actually create a space for you to come and practice the tools that we're teaching you and learn how to use your own unique medicine and do it in a unique way that's authentic to you. And I think personally that it's through lots of practice that you actually see your gifts more clearly. And that's what your thing is. Again, it's less that you're a sound healer or that you're a Reiki healer or that you're a shamanic practitioner, and more about the unique work that you do, the unique blueprint that you have in your medicine and in your magic. One of the things, like for me, my thing is I activate people's magic when they're around me, just by the nature of being around me. Their gifts come out, their gifts come alive, and I have a unique way of being able to reflect that to them. I also create opportunities. It's just part of the way I work. When you work with me, I create opportunities for you where there weren't opportunities before. And I teach you how to do that beyond working with me. When you work with me or interact with me, it's likely you'll start dreaming spontaneously, or you'll start opening up dream magic. It's just part of who I am and what I do. It's not a modality that I learned. So if you are if that's where you are, if you feel like you're hopping from modality to modality, what's missing is that you're not in touch with your unique medicine. And when you get in touch with your unique medicine, it's in that place where your gifts come out, where the powerful work you were designed to do becomes very clear, where you can actually really embody your worth and charge what you should be charging to do the amazing work that you do, to do the transformational, the life-changing sessions that you do with people. All of that is rooted in being connected to your unique magic. And every single person is different. There's not a specific thing. Opening your spiritual gifts is more than just the clairs, although that has something to do with it, right? It's more about your actual energetic blueprint and what you came to do in the world. So if you feel like you're searching around, that's where I would come back to. And I gave this suggestion early in the episode regarding picking your title, but it could also be helpful for you to draw that line and kind of track back throughout your life for your significant experiences and see if there's something that you've kind of been learning over time, because that can be a pretty good clue into what you're here to do as opposed to the modality that you choose. And when you find yourself, if you feel like you haven't found the right modality, it's because you're not actually in touch with your gifts, and it wouldn't feel authentic to you because it's not about the modality. So I love this question. I know that there are a lot of people that get kind of stuck in this spot, and I encourage you to come all the way back to what your unique gifts are. Again, we help you uncover that in shaman school and then make a business out of that. But you can do some of this work. You can kind of do some of this initial work on your own. Just know that it's less about what you train in and more about you just being connected to your gifts in general. Thanks so much for the question.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Leading with Spirit.
And if you did, please share the link for this episode with your biggest takeaway, tagging me at Holton Healing Arts. It would also support me if you subscribed and left a rating and review of the show so we can support more people living their highest purpose. Until next time, journey on.